Hi, I'm Marco Rubio. Let me thank you, as I always do, for the honor and the privilege of serving you here in Washington as your United States Senator. This is probably our last Mailbox segment of the year, and it's a special holiday edition. So let me start by wishing all of you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year. So let's reach into our final mailbox for the year. As always, we encourage you to write us and email us because we pick 2 or 3 a week and we read them on the air, and you never know, your letter or email could be next. So obviously the hot topics this week are the issues that are remaining for Congress to close out our session for the year. And these are important issues, and so let's address them. And let's start with Milena, who's in Fort Myers, and she writes, as a fellow Cuban American, I urge you to consider your working class constituents and help pass a fair and equitable payroll tax bill that is not tied to other political measures. The wealthy have continued to have their tax cuts for 10 years, but there's an issue with passing a simple payroll tax cut for millions of Americans for another year. Why? Well, Milena, let me just say this. There is no issue really about extending the payroll tax. It's the question of how do we pay for it. The payroll tax, when they take it out of your paycheck every month, it goes into the Social Security Trust Fund, and it's put aside so that that money's there when you retire, so you have Social Security benefits. So if you cut payroll taxes like the Congress did last year, and you don't replace the money, you're just creating a deficit in the Social Security system. And that's the concern that I have. So my argument has been, yes, let's go ahead and extend the payroll tax for 1 more year, because the last thing we need is a tax increase on Americans. But let's pay for it. And I propose we pay for it by freezing federal spending and federal salaries. It's a reasonable approach. Unfortunately, my friends in the Democratic Party have chosen what they call a millionaire tax. Now look, I know it sounds popular, and I know this president loves to say and tell people like you and others that the reason why you're having tough times is because other people are having an easy time. That the reason why things are worse off for you and me is because things are better off for other people. But it's not true. The bottom line is that that's never been who we are as a country. That's never been part of our national character. We've never gone around, and we certainly have never had presidents go around and tell us that we need to be angry at other Americans because of how well they're doing. In fact, what we've always done is we've celebrated other people's success, and all we've asked for is the opportunity to have a chance at that same success ourselves. And that's what we need to be fighting for. Not turning more power over to government so they could take from some people and give to other people, but fighting for a government and policies that make it possible for all of us to be successful. I don't want anyone else in America to be worse off. I just want to have a chance to do better. I know that's what you want and what other people want. And we need leadership that points that out. So this payroll tax issue, it should not be an opportunity to engage in class warfare, which is counterproductive and quite frankly unfair. It should be an opportunity to do what's right. I support another 1-year extension of the payroll tax cut, and I support paying for it, not through a tax increase, but by freezing federal spending. It's a reasonable approach, and I hope that my friends here in the Democratic Party will come around on that issue. Thank you for your input. Our second letter is from John in Ponte Vedra Beach, and he writes about excessive government spending. Federal government spending has almost doubled in the last 10 years. This is a clear indication that successive administrations and Congresses have been fiscally irresponsible. They have been unwilling to either reduce spending or raise taxes. Significant spending cuts as opposed to cuts in the growth and spending are now required to effectively reduce the U.S. deficit in a timely manner. Likewise, concrete actions to encourage the creation of long-term private sector jobs are required. This is from John. John, you're right about excessive spending. The truth is we're at an unsustainable rate of spending. Here's the most troubling part. The American economy is about $15 trillion large. It is the single largest economy in all of human history, both in scope and size. There's nothing to compare it to. I mean, it is this extraordinarily prosperous economy. Even in these tough times, you know, we're still almost 3 times bigger than China's economy, and they have a lot more people. Here's the scarier concept. We've built a government that not even the richest, most prosperous country in the history of the world can afford to pay for. Our national debt is $15 trillion. We borrow over 40 cents out of every dollar that the federal government spends. Think about that. 40 cents out of every dollar that Washington spends is borrowed money. So you're absolutely right, it's unsustainable. And a lot of that is being driven by the so-called entitlement programs, particularly Medicare. Look, I'm a believer in Medicare. I want to save Medicare. My mom's on Medicare. It's critically important for her at this stage in her life to have a Medicare that works and it's functional. But Medicare's going bankrupt. And anyone that says we don't want to touch Medicare or do anything about Medicare, number one, they're not being serious about the problem that we face, and number two, they want to bankrupt it. So my point is, let's fix programs like Medicare. Let's not, you know, we don't have to fundamentally change anything in them for people that are in the program now. But let's make changes to these programs so that they don't bankrupt our country, don't bankrupt themselves, and are there for me when I retire and you when you retire if you're not already retired. And so that's really the point we need to focus at in terms of spending, is real solutions. And that's why this week I voted for a balanced budget amendment, a real balanced budget amendment that doesn't create this easy out as an excuse to simply raise taxes and therefore destroy jobs. This balanced budget amendment says if you want to raise taxes, you have to get a supermajority vote in the House and Senate. That's a reasonable thing to ask for, because the increase of taxes is one of the most destructive things that government can do. If it needs to do it, it should be done through a supermajority. That's why I supported a balanced budget amendment. Unfortunately, it failed. We hope to have a chance to get that done in the near future. So thank you for your letter and for your concern. Our final letter is about budget cuts, and it's from Tracy. He writes from Fort Myers that I understand that making any sort of reduction in the size and scope of the budget is difficult when the Senate and presidency is controlled by Democrats. But when are we going to make actual cuts in the budget rather than reductions in the amount of future increases? When I have to cut my budget, I actually reduce the amount I spend rather than say I'm going to spend only 7% more next year instead of 9% more. It's extremely frustrating to hear talk of budget cuts when spending isn't exactly going down, just when spending isn't actually going down, just not increasing as much. Well, you're absolutely right. That's called fancy accounting, and it's a trick they do all the time in government. In fact, what will happen is that people that thought they were going to get $1 million are only going to get $800,000 more. They thought they were going to get $1 million increase, but they're only getting an $800,000 increase. And then they go to the newspapers and say, our budget's being cut by $200,000. When in fact, they're actually getting an increase of $800,000. They're just not getting an increase of $1 million. And I encountered that in state government, and we encountered that here in Washington. Look, the day of reckoning is here. Look at Europe. Look what's happening in Europe. They ignored their problems for decades, and now look what's happening. And we're next. It's not an exaggeration to say that. I don't want that to be the case, but that is the case. We owe $15 trillion. That's more than the size of our overall economy. And that is unsustainable. We can't keep doing these things. And so you're absolutely right. The time has come. And that's why I voted against these continuing resolutions. That's why I voted against the debt bill, because they don't solve the problem. This is not about cosmetics. This is not about fixing something up and claiming it's a solution. If we don't solve this problem, the day of reckoning will be upon us. Soon, people will stop lending the United States money, and when that happens, we're going to have a catastrophic budget cuts. We need to deal with this now in a serious and meaningful way, and I hope that we have the political courage here to do this before the next election. And if not, we may pay a terrible price for that. So I share your frustration. I'll continue to vote against these cosmetic measures and continue to raise my voice to the fact that no one likes to do this, but if we care about our future and about our children's future and the America they're going to inherit, then we have to do this. Well, I want to thank all of you. It's been a year almost now since I've been here in Washington, and we've learned a lot over the last 12 months. This series has been one of the highlights of my service here. We love reading your emails and your letters. Even the ones that we don't read on the air influence how we think and how we feel about issues. It really keeps us in touch with you and with what you have in mind, and we have altered our positions on occasion, or at least re-examined issues on occasion because of the input that we're getting from folks like you back home. So we encourage you, whether you agree with me or not, to email us and write us, because it matters. We read it, and you never know. We may pick one of your letters or emails and read it right here on the next installment of Constituent Mailbox. So I just want to thank all of you. I hope you're having a safe and prosperous holiday season. I hope that those of you that are looking for a job will find one. I hope those of you that are struggling to make ends meet will finally turn the corner in this coming year. There's only certain things government can do, but whatever we can do, we should do. And I pledge to continue to work on your behalf because I know people are hurting. But at this time of year, let's just pause for a moment and be grateful and thankful for the kind of nation we live in and the opportunities we have to live in freedom and relative prosperity. So thank you all so very much for your support. I wish all of you a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah for our Jewish friends, and a Happy New Year to everyone. May God bless all of you. May God bless our great state of Florida. And like always, may God bless the United States of America.